Now, our investigative reporter with an update to a story, Savannah, you have covered for a number of years, and it is a cold case that had been cold for a number of years. Now, new developments. There was an arrest late last year, and now more developments happening this week.
That's right. So when I first came to 11 Alive in 2020, late 2020, a few people had reached out to me and said, no one ever covered this case in the local media. It's about this teenager who went missing and was later found dead after his homecoming dance. It was just all so bizarre. So I started covering the case, which at that time had basically run cold. But let's watch that original story, why don't we? Just to catch up kind of on the background of this case.
He was one of the funniest people I knew.
Max Gibbs remembers his buddy Blake like it was yesterday.
If you were down in a bad mood, he would make you laugh somehow.
And Melissa Becker.
He always looked at the best in people.
Holds on tight to the memory of her little boy.
He loved people. His friends were so very important to him. I don't think he ever had an enemy in his life.
She also remembers the night of October 15th, 2011, sending her baby off to homecoming. And later that night, Blake calling from his friend's house where he was supposed to be sleeping over.
He said, "Mom, I had so much fun. It was, the best day of my life. I got to hang out with my friends and dance."
What happened after that phone call is a mystery that's still haunting. Blake seen walking to his girlfriend's house and not long after leaving to walk back to his friends, but he never made it.
The friend that he stayed the night with calls me and says, "Blake's missing." I'm like, what do you mean Blake's missing? Well, he went to his girlfriend's and he never came back.
The search lasted 2 agonizing months.
We started calling him, and nobody could get in touch.
It's like he just disappeared off the face of the earth.
And then in December 2011, Melissa got the call. Her little boy had been found dead in a creek in East Noonan. He'd been shot and left in only his underwear.
My world stopped that day. I couldn't believe it. I had hope that he was going to walk down that driveway.
Everything we've received has been run down and vetted and rolled out at this point.
Lieutenant Chris Robinson with Noonan PD took over the case in 2019. By then, they'd interviewed dozens of people, followed every lead, but never could figure out who killed Blake or why.
Without the community support and people who know something coming forward, it just makes it about impossible to get anywhere right now.
Blake's phone, wallet, and clothes disappeared. Police don't know if he was killed the night he went missing or if he was kidnapped and the killer dumped his body later. And they don't know who could have done this. But someone out there does.
Somebody knows something.
And so now, a decade later, the plea for answers, for justice, continues.
He was just an innocent child. I just want to know why.
So that was the original story we did. Obviously really heartbreaking. You have to wonder who would do this. And you heard from investigators there that they really had no leads for a very long time. Well, 14 years later, in September, there's a break in the case. A press conference is held. They've made an arrest of this man named Scotty Elliott Smith.
And this week, Mr. Smith was in court again, correct?
Yes, yesterday he had his arraignment, so I just confirmed this morning that he waived his appearance, so his attorneys essentially went on his behalf and entered a not guilty plea. They set a trial date for June 23rd, so it appears he will be proceeding under that not guilty plea, and we'll see what happens in court.
Savannah, let's talk about this. I mean, we're looking at a cold case. Blake Chappell, he was 17 years old, walking home from a homecoming dance. This all happened in 2011.
Yes.
It has been, 15 years at this point? What changed for investigators to help them identify who they think is responsible for this?
It's interesting. From the very beginning of the time I took on this case, they had been very tight-lipped. My understanding was they didn't have a huge wealth of information, and so they wanted to keep what they did have pretty close to chest so as not to inhibit the investigation. I've asked, this guy who has been arrested, I've spoken with Blake's mom, and she said she doesn't recognize the name. None of his friends recognize the name, so they don't think it's someone that Blake knew, which bears the question, of course, Was this random? Who randomly kills a 17-year-old kid with not more than his cell phone? And then I guess hides the body. You know, he's also being charged with concealing a body because his body didn't show up for 2 months later in a creek in the middle of the town. So a lot of questions that we don't know the answers to yet.
And this defendant, the arraignment happened yesterday, entered a not guilty plea, correct?
Yes.
So this is the beginning of the legal process, the beginning of the march towards trial, eventually, in this case, we suspect. What is the family of Blake Chappell telling you when you talk to them about these developments?
You know, his mom for so long has just wanted answers. So I think, you know, when this arrest happened, on the one hand, she was grateful that maybe we're one step closer to justice, but she has a lot of the same questions that we have. Is how did this person enter my son's orbit? Our understanding is he was living in this town the entire time. What evidence came forward now that led to this arrest? She doesn't know the answers. She would like to. She's hoping that this does go to trial so that she can learn what happened.
And just the devastating impact, not only of the loss of your son, but then this wait, almost a 2-decade-long wait, just to then begin working the case's way through the criminal justice process for family, for his mother, of course, and also his friend. You talked to one of Blake's friends there, and I mean, the emotion was just so visible, Savannah.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of his friends over the years, and they've all kind of said the same thing. He was just this guy that got along with really everyone, so it's unfathomable to them who could have done this and why. And so I think a lot of people want answers, and hopefully we will get them through the course of this playing out in the courtroom.
And Savannah, I know, and I ask this question not to ask you to speculate about this case in particular, but you've covered, unfortunately, a lot of homicides in your career. You've covered cold cases in your career. We have seen, including in other recent cases we've been following in the last few weeks, that the evolution in forensic technology, DNA testing technology, has unlocked some new possibilities for investigators who keep chipping away at cold cases. Do you have any inclination that may have helped in this case? And it's okay if you don't. I want to ask you to speculate.
I would love to know. I've asked, you know, if they have DNA evidence that might have linked. My understanding from his mother and her conversations with police is that there was potentially a confession involved. I don't know if that is the main premise of this charge, but it should be interesting. I mean, you talk about a case from 2011. I mean, we talked about cell phone records even. They weren't able to pull those then in the same way that they are now. So a lot of outdated, potentially, information that they have. So that will pose a challenge, certainly, as this goes to trial, but it will be interesting to see what information they've held on to all this time.
And Savannah, your work, you have really advocated for this case too. I mean, I know that you have covered this from every step of the way. For you to see this development and see charges in September and then an arraignment this week for a case that you've been really close to for some time, you know, how did that news hit you?
It was a day I honestly wasn't sure would ever come. I certainly hoped it would, but after 14 years, you think, well, yes, somebody knows something, but wouldn't they have said something by now? So, you know, I'm hopeful for closure for this family who suffered with this and the unknown of this for so long. I hope that they are able to find that closure one way or another as we learn more about what really happened and what led to this kid walking home from a dance to be murdered and dumped in such a strange and horrific way.
And on a night too that is supposed to be, you know, the kind of a highlight of your high school experience. 17-year-old Blake Chappell killed.
Life ahead of him, yeah.
We're going to be following